clothes. Why would anyone do that?
Curiosity? People wondering what an egg penis looks like?
Sir, according to the police department's probable cause affidavit, one witness described your penis as oval-shaped and claimed when erect it was thick towards the bottom but was thin and small towards the head portion and called it egg-shaped. Those are not my words. I apologize.
Welcome back to Rumble. Welcome back to the show. We're on Rumble. Why are we on Rumble? Because we're going to talk about stuff that the deep state doesn't want you to talk about. And we all know that Google is a partner with the CIA and is a military contractor. So they censor heavily on YouTube. But our guest today is Richard Gage. He's an architect and 9/11 investigator who founded Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth in 2006. He was on this early, a year before me. An organization that claims the World Trade Center was destroyed in a controlled demolition and that the 9/11 attacks were an inside job and that fire did not cause the collapse of the World Trade Center building. 7, he has appeared in several documentaries and given numerous presentations on the topic. Also with us is Kamal Obeid. He is a California licensed structural engineer and a civil engineer with experience at Land Tech Consultants. He holds a degree from the University of California, Berkeley, and is involved in the 9/11 Truth Movement, contributing to discussions on search engine censorship and the investigation of the World Trade Center collapse. Welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jimmy.
Okay, so now I'm going to show what got us to wanting to bring you on is that Senator Ron Johnson went on, I believe it was Benny Johnson's show, and he said this. Let me play this for us.
And I know that we're up against a hard out. Just one final question, since you brought it up. What would you like to know about September 11th, the official story there, Senator?
Well, start with Building 7. Again, I don't know that you can find structural engineers other than the ones that had the corrupt investigation inside NIST that would say that that thing didn't come down in any other way than a controlled demolition. I mean, you just look at that. You talk about molten steel. Again, you listen to the documentary Bravo 7. There's an awful lot of questions. You know, who ordered the removal and then destruction of all that evidence? Totally contrary to any other firefighting investigation procedures. I mean, who ordered that? Who was in charge? I think there's some basic information. Where's all the documentation from the NIST investigation? No, there are a host of questions that I want, and I will be asking, quite honestly, now that my eyes have been opened up. I've talked to former Congressman Kurt Weldon now. I will work with him to expose what he's willing to expose as well.
Wow. So we may actually see hearings about this.
I think so. And by the way, this was opened up when my ranking member now, when he was chairman of the PRISM subcommittee investigation, he did the investigation on the PGA and LIV Golf and the PIF. Part of that is we had 9/11 families coming forward and saying, we want the FBI files unredacted. We want those made available in terms of what happened. What did the FBI know had happened? So we got engaged with that on a bipartisan basis. We want to get those answers, those documents for the families. Again, we didn't get squat from the FBI. So hopefully now, with this administration, I think President Trump should have some interest, being a New Yorker himself. What actually happened in 9/11? What do we know? What is being covered up? My guess is there's an awful lot being covered up in terms of what the American government knows about 9/11.
Wow, including who let the hijackers into the country, which was John Brennan, station chief in Doha. Why would he do that? And why would you let him take flight lessons? There's so many things that don't make absolutely no sense at all when you actually look at the government's own documentation. This is from Guantanamo Bay. And then to your last point, and then let's please put up the senator's X account here. Everybody follow Ron Johnson. This is bombshell stuff. But yeah, President Trump on the morning of September 11th saying there's no way those buildings came down by themselves. They're the strongest buildings in all of New York. There's no way they came down that way. This is President Trump's own words. And it matches the words of the firefighters who were in the building, many of them who've perished. So we owe them, at the very least, these guys gave their lives. We owe them the chance to get absolution here and the truth. Thank you, Senator, for fighting for those things. God bless you and Godspeed in your pursuit of the truth.
Okay, so that's what led me to bring on these two gentlemen. And why do you? So he made the point that the only architects and engineers that you can find that will agree with the official story from the NIST, which is the National Institute for Science and Technology, that said it came down from a fire. The only architects and engineers that you can find are those people, that anybody working outside. So why are so many of the architects and engineers quiet? I mean, how many people do you have working with you?
3,600.
Well, that's a lot, right?
It's a whole lot. But most of the architects in the American Institute of Architects don't even know that a third tower came down, Jimmy. This has been swept under the rug. I'm one of 90,000 members of the American Institute of Architects. We didn't get one bulletin on this, the third worst structural failure in modern history. How many bulletins did you guys get from the American Society of Engineers?
Right. So I just want to remind people who Senator Ron Johnson is before we go further. Senator Ron Johnson is a guy who they've tried to discredit and slander, meaning the establishment press, because he was right about COVID. He was right about where the virus that was created in a lab, and he was right about the lockdowns and all that stuff. And so they had to discredit him, and they are I'm sure going to do the same thing about him when he opens the 9/11 investigation, except we've had enough time. It's been 24 years now, and enough people. You have 3,000 architects and engineers working with you. You have shows like mine, shows like Benny Johnson, people with big voices, Tucker Carlson. And we have former Congressman Ron Weldon we had on this show that got well over 1 million views. And he said that he's talked to the firemen. He's listened to the tapes. He said that there was a recording of a fireman who got to the floor in the Twin Towers where the fire was. There's a recording of him saying, yeah, there's a couple of fires up here. We can put them out. We'll handle them. And 5 minutes later, the whole building came down.
Yeah, that was Chief Oreo Palmer. And there are 156 first responders on record orally talking about the explosions that they saw, they heard, they felt, and many of them before the towers ever came down. We have all this documentation at ae911truth.org and richardgage911.org. It is extraordinary how many witnesses of explosions, including the 36 reporters that day who reported this as an event, an explosion-based event, and as witnesses themselves, over half of them.
I want to show, so you sent me some slides. I want to show you. This is one of them. It says, here are the features of a controlled demolition. One, there's a sudden onset of destruction near the base of the structure. So the thing that never made sense to me, and I had on, by the way, I had on the head engineer, a professor from the University of Alaska, came on this show. He is a retired, and so that's why he was allowed to do this investigation, because he didn't have anything to lose anymore, whereas everybody else would get fired and kicked out of the industry. He investigated it, and he was the one who told me that if a building was going to come, if the fire was happening, it melted the steel in the top. Why did the bottom steel? Why did that explode and turn into dust? That doesn't make any sense, right?
No, it doesn't. The official narrative tells us that the upper part, after weakening of steel, the floor trusses, they pulled in the perimeter columns, and then the top part drove the rest of the building down to the ground and almost at free fall speed in the case of the Twin Towers. And that's not what happened at all. We look at the videos and we see the top part is telescoping in on itself. It's destroyed in 3 seconds. After that, we have explosions, which more first responders heard, and then laterally ejected, freely flying structural steel sections weighing 4 and 8 tons each, ejected at 80 miles an hour, clocked by physicists, landing 600 feet in every direction outside the towers. This is not a collapse. You can just see it when you put in fact, we have this video to show your viewers. There's outward arching streamers in the destruction of the Twin Towers, a geometry of fireworks, these freely flying, solid, molten objects trailed by thick white smoke clouds. Steel is not flammable in off-fire conditions. This is the aluminum oxide ash, the other byproduct of thermite, in addition to molten iron, that's trailing these structural steel members. And that's what happens to them. They're impaled in the skyscrapers all around them.
So you have that video? Do you want? Let me see. I think I might have it. Let me check.
Yeah, you should have that one.
Is this the video?
No, it's a little later on because we jumped past Building 7.
Is this?
Danny Joe.
No, hang on.
There you go. Upward, outward arching streamers, a geometry of fireworks, freely flying. 4-ton structural steel sections ejected that way in 80 miles an hour. Is that normal in a collapse, Kamal? I want him to speak up too.
Yeah, well, I think Jimmy was initially talking about Building 7. That's what Professor Halsey did the study on. And in fact, he was still working at the University of Alaska. And in fact, he got some support initially with the university, and then he retired. He got help from PhD students. But anyway, so Building 7 is a little bit different. It doesn't have the same pulverizing effect that the Twin Towers have. And in some ways, it's much more interesting for engineers to look at because it's easier to explain in some sense. I mean, the Twin Towers are obviously exploded, but the Building 7 is collapsed straight into its footprint. And the only way that could happen as well is removal of the entire columns along the full footprint of the building, along 8 stories. That's what Professor Halsey had to determine. So anyway, that's my thought.
Do you have a video of Building 7 you can play?
Yeah, it's at the beginning there.
Oh, let me see.
And so here's this building. After this is a 47-story skyscraper.
Oh, here it is.
Easily the tallest building in most of our states. The east penthouse comes down first in an isolated event. 6 seconds later, the entire building comes down like you see here. And there, coming down soon. There it goes. And it's smooth. It's sudden. It's symmetrical. And this is after many witnesses heard explosions. You can hear and see all of them on our website, ae911truth.org and richardgage911.org. And this is an extraordinary comparison to controlled demolitions. We've all seen the old hotels in Las Vegas,
right,
where they fall at free fall because not one, as Kamal said, not one of those 81 columns on any floor gave any resistance to this building's collapse. There was 40,000 tons of structural steel, 5 times stronger than it needed to be to support the building.
And so, and here, I often make this point. So here's the Twin Towers. And here's all the way over here. So the plane did not hit this building. I go, if you think that a steel frame building built to collapse into his own footprint because a plane hit another building 100 yards away, I've got a vaccine I'd like to sell you. Because
that's right, Jimmy, because there were only a few small scattered fires in this building. And Sham Sunder of NIST says, hey, this is primarily due to fires. You conspiracy theorists should go to sleep. Go back to sleep, because we proved now, NIST, with all of their bank of engineers, which is about a dozen, proved that the building, well, they didn't prove it at all. In fact, their own computer simulation completely disproves their theory. And Kamal can share with you why that is.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, the whole concept, the NIST report was quite an elaborate report that was put together, was released in 2008, and I studied it at that time. And it has so many flaws, very disturbing flaws in it, that no engineer that is with his professional license should sign on to it. The concept is that they talk about initiating what initiated the collapse, and their concept is that one column on the 13th floor buckled and failed after a bunch of stuff happened. And then if that happened, that took the whole building down in a cascading event of progressive collapse, which is an amazing scenario. It's like the silver bullet in the JFK assassination. So what happened though? It's essentially because the NIST study actually disproves itself. When you look at the model, and you probably have a video of that, the model shows that even if you fail the entire building on the inside, if you fail every one of the columns on the inside, as they explained that they assume what happened, and so if that happens, then the building crumples like a soda can because it pulls in the walls. The exterior of the building is so ductile and so it's allowed to move in such a way that it doesn't fail. So when the structure on the outside sucks it in.
So this is Building 7 here.
Yeah, and those are the fires.
And these are the fires they say that collapse these small scattered fires. They say collapse that building into its own footprint.
Then they destroyed every one of the 80 columns on at least 8 floors, because that's the period during which there was free fall, which is a third of the building's 7-second collapse. Fires have never in history brought down a steel frame fire protected structure ever. Well, not this one.
Here's a
not
picture,
any of them.
And here's a picture of another steel framed fire building engulfed in fire. That didn't fall into its own footprint. That looks like a fire that was in one of the Twin Towers. So that's one. Here's another one you show. In May 1998 in Los Angeles, look at that fire. A 62-story building burned for 3.5 hours. In 1991, Philadelphia, a 38-story building burned for 18 hours, over 8 floors. In 2004, Caracas, Venezuela, a 56-story building burned for 17 hours, over 26 floors. None of them collapsed into their own footprint. Isn't that wild?
Not one. There's not one in history. A steel frame fire protected structure. It's designed as an incinerator. It's designed to allow any fire in a skyscraper to burn out and not affect the building, give people enough time. 2 to 3 hour fire protection is what we, as architects, put on the steel that Kamal's profession designs as structural engineers. We work very hard, and the codes are very well written to protect these structures. And again, no plane hit this building, which means no broken columns from the plane, which means no heat from the jet fuel. Even though jet fuel only burns about 690 degrees at the max, according to the engineer, ME Petroleum. So jet fuel cannot accomplish these temperatures. If you can find that crab claw excavator, we'll begin to look at the temperatures that are associated with the debris pile here, because the steel is dripping out of the crab claw excavator, and we can tell by the color of this dripping molten steel what its temperature is likely to be. And we're exceeding 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit. There's nothing in the official narrative that can possibly account for this. The office fires are only burning about 500 or 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. We're 3 times that with the evidence that you see here in the FEMA report, which came out in 2002 in the Building Performance Assessment Team report. Silver dollar size holes in the steel. Well, guess what? Office fires can't do that. So they don't even speculate about what it might have been, although they document liquid iron invading the grain boundaries of the steel, hot sulfur corrosion attack on the steel. None of this was included in, this is a metallurgical report, by the way, in Appendix C of their report, but NIST threw it out when they took over in 2004, the investigation.
When you say NIST, NIST is the National Institute for Science and Technology that did the official study that gave us the official BS report on how the buildings fell, correct? So when you
It's
say
the National
NIST,
Institute of Standards and
oh,
Technology.
that's it, National Institute of
And
Standards and Technology. Sorry,
they produced a 1,000-page report on Building 7 and a 10,000-page report on the Twin Towers, making it long enough to completely bamboozle all the architects and engineers. And by the way, the report came out 7 years after 9/11, when anybody who knew about the building forgot about it. So that's what we're dealing with. And here you have a piece of steel from the Twin Towers where 5/8-inch thick web members were reduced to razor sharpness. This is very well defined by these metallurgists at Worcester Polytechnic. And this, they say, this can't happen by office fires. They don't speculate what could have happened. But we also have the evidence of previously molten iron microspheres in the dust, which they don't know where they came from. It's iron, elemental iron. It's the byproduct of thermite. What you're looking at here is the actual samples of the red-gray chips, dual layered, red on one side, gray on the other. They thought it was paint, right? It looks like primer paint, but they put a magnet to it. And unlike primer paint, all these chips come to the magnet. They're about 1/16 of an inch large, but then they get curious. They do X-ray energy dispersive spectroscopy on it, and they find that it has the ingredients of thermite, an incendiary used by the military to cut through steel, like a hot knife through butter. And so they go, whoa, this is weird. Why is iron oxide powder and aluminum powder in these unignited pieces of nanothermite? Well, they zoom in 50,000 times with an electron microscope, and they find what? Nano-sized particles of iron oxide and aluminum powder, 1,000 times smaller than the diameter of a human hair. Well, they go, what is this stuff? And it's set in a bed of oxygen silica carbon, which is organic material, which when it ignites, it produces a lot of gas and knocks things over. That's how explosives work. But incendiaries work by means of massive heat, 4,000, 5,000 degree temperatures. That alone explains the incredible heat that we have so much evidence for. But this nanothermite, when they put it in a heater, a differential scanning calorimeter, they ignite and producing a lot of energy. So they prove that this stuff is thermitic material. And they proved because it issues what when it ignites? Molten iron microspheres with the same chemical signature as the USGS found in all the World Trade Center dust samples of all this previously molten iron microspheres that they discovered. NRJ Lee group independently discovered them too. So we know exactly where those spheres came from. They came from these red-gray chips that you're looking at right here. This is the evidence of what really brought down the towers. It's irrefutable and scientific forensic evidence.
And what this shows, this is irrefutable science, that shows that they used thermite. Right?
Yes, specifically nanothermite, which is high-tech stuff.
So the question that people always like to say is like, well, they could never have pulled off this kind of conspiracy. How would they? Well, somebody would have seen them planting these explosives. You know how long it would take for them to plant these explosives to bring this building down? I don't know, but who are you going to believe? The government or your lying eyes? What do you say to when people say that?
I believe the research of Kevin Ryan, who did a detailed study on the fireproofing upgrades that happened in the months and years before 9/11. And he found that those specific floors that were upgraded with fireproofing were the floors that the plane hit. This slide is incredible because the coincidence it's not a coincidence. It's obviously causality. They have put fireproofing, which can be applied in liquid as intumescent paint. And so under the guise, the dark operation of applied fireproofing, they could have been applying nanothermite. Plus, we know that the towers were only about half occupied at the time of the event on 9/11. So they had plenty of time and access to all kinds of floors throughout the Twin Towers and even Building 7, because the evacuation orders from data from Building 7 that NIST gave us show that there were only half of the building's occupants that evacuated. So either the rest died or they weren't there. In other words, the building was only half occupied.
Okay. So let me just show, and so you have corroboration around the world. Here's an expert corroboration. This is Danny Jowenko, and here's what he says.
Danny Jowenko is the expert on this in Europe. What did he say?
Dit is controlled demolition. Zeker weten, zeker weten. Er is nagesprongen. Dit is in opdracht gebeurd. Het heeft een team gedaan van experts.
So he says it's a hired job done by a team of experts.
And he should know.
And he should know. Let me show you this video. So I've seen this before. I've also seen the video of the owner of the World Trade Center where he said we'd made the decision to pull the building. And so that tells you they made the decision to implode it.
Well, he says, I was talking to the fire commander, and there's such a loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And so they gave the order to pull, and we watched the building come down. Well, firefighters don't pull buildings.
Yes.
And Larry says later, oh, I didn't mean pull the building. I meant pull the firefighters out of the building. But guess what? They were kept out of the building. They were not allowed into the building at all to fight the fires because they were told it was going to come down on its own, as were many others, including these mysterious construction workers walking away from Building 7, hearing an explosion over their shoulder, looking back at the building, and then looking straight into the CNN camera and saying this, "Did you hear that? That building's coming down. The building's going to blow up."
Now here's the video. Here's the video of them saying that.
What?
You hear that?
Keep your eye on that building. It'll be coming down.
The building is about to blow up. Move it back.
All right, guys. Sorry.
We are walking back. There's a building about to blow up. On flame. Debris coming down.
Not only is the building going to come down, but it's going to blow up. And then we've got the BBC announcing the collapse of this building 20 minutes before it ever happened. They apologize for this grievous error, citing the confusing events of the day. What, does that make them psychic or something? And then you got CNN announcing the collapse of a 50-story building at 11:07 that morning. So maybe it was supposed to come down, because if it did come down at 10:45, which is when they said this firefighter rushed by and told them it came down. If it did come down at that time, we wouldn't have any videos of it coming down. These beautiful videos that you've been showing, it would have been obscured in the massive dust cloud released when the Twin Towers came down. So maybe it was supposed to come down at that time. And those mysterious construction workers, maybe they were fixing a dud in the building because they knew it was going to blow up. That's pretty darn fascinating.
And so you're never invited on mainstream news outlets to talk about this or to debate the people from the NIST who came out with the official version. Have you ever been invited to do that?
No, they don't want to hear about the 4 and 8 ton structural steel sections, which are ejected laterally out of the towers, landing 600 feet away, nor the 110 floors, which are pulverized to a fine powder in midair right before our eyes, and then spread from river to river across lower Manhattan in a 3-inch thick blanket. Why don't they want to know about that? Because that was 2/3 of the weight of the building, not available to crush the building below it. And yet all of that weight.
So you're saying, so when we see this,
Danny Jowenko.
oh, no, that's not it. Hang on, let me find it. Let me find it again. Hold on. So when you say, so they said the official version is the weight of the building crushed that steel, which
that's right.
See, again, just I'm not an engineer. It seems crazy that could happen. But you're saying that the weight of the building was exploded. There was
Exactly,
no
and
weight of the
spread.
building. There it is.
That's right. It is gone. 99% of the weight of that building is not available to crush anything. The lateral ejection of the steel and the pulverized concrete in a 3 square mile area of Lower Manhattan proves that none of that weight was available to crush anything. And Zdeněk Bazant is the engineer from Chicago, Northwestern University, and he had a theory which he put out 2 days after 9/11. The rest of us are freaked out, right? Not him. He's in his den creating the theory, which today remains the key theoretical basis for NIST's column failure theory. And in it, he not only used all of that weight, but Tony Zambotti, Richard Johns, Gregory Zudolinski, they proved that Bazant had doubled that weight up above. And in addition, they decreased the column absorption capacity below by a factor of 3, rigging it completely, the equation in favor of a collapse.
So you're saying
this is complete fraud.
So you're saying they completely invented numbers to make their theory work, because if they used the actual numbers, their theory wouldn't work and the building would never have come down that way. And the one more telltale sign, I remember when I interviewed the professor from the University of Alaska who debunked the Building 7 theory, was he said, well, if this is true and buildings are able to be brought down into their footprint from a fire, steel buildings, they should have updated the building codes to deal with that problem. But they never did update the building codes, right?
Did they come on?
Well, let me just add one thing. It's interesting because the voluminous document that NIST produced, the 10,000-page document that Richard just mentioned a little while ago for the collapse of the towers, that document did not explain the global collapse of the building. It just arrived at a conclusion that global collapse ensued. That's it. No. And so the Professor Bazant is the one who had come up with a theory written on paper, essentially just a few pages long, explaining how the building could have collapsed globally. But that theory is flawed, as Richard has mentioned. And the interesting thing about it is it came out just a couple of days after the event. So it just seems a little suspicious that happened that way.
So are you aware of the Project for a New American Century?
Of course.
Yes.
And so they talk in there about how they want to take over all these Middle Eastern countries and decapitate their leadership and replace them with Western friendly. And they said that they would need a Pearl Harbor type event, correct? And didn't also Benjamin Netanyahu predict that terrorists would do this? And so could you speak to both those things?
Well, I think let me just interject here. It's somewhat outside our purview as architects and engineers to actually discuss these global political issues.
Okay.
We have our own personal opinions about that, but I don't think we can be professional of us to share them.
I hear you. I understand. So let me just take one break. Let me throw it over to Steph for 1 second. Let me get one more video I want to show you, and I'll be right back. Steph,
All right. I'm going to read some super chats right now. S.A. Soleas, thank you so much for your generosity. FSL, thank you very much. Savage, thank you very much for all of your support. Much appreciated. My_war, why not eliminate the statue of Lady Justice? The statue no longer represents truth and justice. It hasn't for a long time. Savage, people in chat who despise or hate my words against the U.S. government can go and do something to themselves. Savage, really?
Okay.
Argumentative today. Back to Jimmy.
No, I just wanted just the whole idea of how this happened. James Corbett kind of deconstructs here, and he does it with satire and sarcasm. And let me just play this video for you just to get your reaction.
On the morning of September 11th, 2001, 19 men armed with box cutters, directed by a man on dialysis in a cave fortress halfway around the world using a satellite phone and a laptop, directed the most sophisticated penetration of the most heavily defended airspace in the world. overpowering the passengers and the military combat-trained pilots on 4 commercial aircraft before flying those planes wildly off course for over an hour without being molested by a single fighter interceptor. These 19 hijackers, devout religious fundamentalists who like to drink alcohol, snort cocaine, and live with pink-haired strippers, managed to knock down 3 buildings with 2 planes in New York, while in Washington, a pilot who couldn't handle a single-engine Cessna was able to fly a 757 in an 8,000-foot descending 270-degree corkscrew turn to come exactly level with the ground, hitting the Pentagon in the budget analyst office where DoD staffers were working on the mystery of the $2.3 trillion that Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld had announced missing from the Pentagon's coffers in a press conference the day before, on September 10th, 2001. Luckily, the news anchors knew who did it within minutes.
Osama bin Laden.
The pundits knew within hours.
Osama bin Laden.
The administration knew within the day.
Terrorists who committed these acts and those who harbored them.
And the evidence literally fell into the FBI's lap.
That a hijacker's passport was found blocks from the World Trade Center crash site, if you can believe that.
But for some reason, a bunch of crazy conspiracy theorists demanded an investigation into the greatest attack on American soil in history. That investigation was delayed, underfunded, set up to fail, a conflict of interest, and a cover-up from start to finish. It was based on testimony extracted through torture, the records of which were destroyed. It failed to mention the existence of WTC-7, Able Danger, P-Tech, Sibel Edmonds, OBL and the CIA, and the drills of hijacked aircraft being flown into buildings that were being simulated at the precise same time that those events were actually happening. It was lied to by the Pentagon, the CIA, the Bush administration, and as for Bush and Cheney, well, no one knows what they told it because they testified in secret, off the record, not under oath, and behind closed doors. It didn't bother to look at who funded the attacks because that question is ultimately of little practical significance. Still, the 9/11 Commission did brilliantly answering all of the questions the public had, except most of the victims' family members' questions, and pinned blame on all the people responsible, although no one so much as lost their job, determining the attacks were
failure of imagination.
Because
nobody in our government, at least, and I don't think the prior government that could envision flying airplanes into buildings.
Except the Pentagon, FEMA, NORAD, and the NRO. The DIA destroyed 2.5 terabytes of data on Able Danger, but that's okay because it probably wasn't important. The SEC destroyed their records on the investigation into the insider trading before the attacks, but that's okay because destroying the records of the largest investigation in SEC history is just part of routine record keeping. NIST has classified the data that they used for their model of WTC-7's collapse, but that's okay because knowing how they made their model of the collapse would jeopardize public safety. The FBI has argued that all material related to their investigation of 9/11 should be kept secret from the public, but that's okay because the FBI probably has nothing to hide. This man never existed, nor is anything he had to say worthy of your attention, and if you say otherwise, you are a paranoid conspiracy theorist and deserve to be shunned by all of humanity. Likewise him, and her. And her, and her, and him. If you have any questions about this story, you are a batshit paranoid tinfoil dog-abusing baby hater and will be reviled by everyone. If you love your country and or freedom, happiness, rainbows, rock and roll, puppy dogs, apple pie, and your grandma, you will never ever express doubts about any part of this story to anyone. Ever. This has been a public service announcement by the Friends of the FBI, CIA, NSA, DIA, SEC, MSM, White House, NIST, and the 9/11 Commission. Because ignorance is strength.
So let me bring you back in and just say, are you in contact with Senator Ron Johnson or with former Congressman Ron Wyden and or Weldon? And what do you have any hope for the truth actually ever coming out on a mass scale? Because I think the beauty is that there's so many people who have been born since 9/11 that weren't traumatized by 9/11 that are actually open to hearing the truth about it. Right? That's a positive.
Yes, I provided all of this evidence that we just talked about to Senator Johnson this morning.
Oh, fantastic.
And he is committed to getting to the bottom of this. And so we're available for extended hearings if we're called to provide the detailed evidence. This is the tip of the iceberg, Jimmy. This goes deep. I have a 5-hour presentation on this subject, and Kamal helped Professor Leroy Hulsey at the University of Alaska during the whole 4 years that he was engineering this study, this finite element study, which completely pulled the rug out from underneath NIST. By the way, they found that fire did not cause the weakening of the steel framing. They found that the only thing that could cause this building to fail was the global failure of all the columns in the building. Well, fires can't do that, can they? No. In fact, the symmetry is betrayed, can only be created by the taking out of the core columns within a fraction of a second of each other, followed about a second later by the perimeter columns, and then repeating that on every floor, that for the period of free fall, the 2.5 seconds that it came down in free fall. So what can do that? Fire can't do that. Thermite-based cutter charges can. And there are patented devices prior to 9/11 that use thermite, that issue in milliseconds molten iron. That's what thermite issues, is molten iron, cutting through steel, again, like a hot knife through butter. So we have patented devices that can do this. We have the evidence of thermite in both ignited and unignited that we talked about today, forms. We have all the evidence to put the real perpetrators away for a long time if we can just get a real investigation. And I think Kurt Weldon has inspired that. In fact, even Luna, Representative Luna, has called for a new investigation with James Comer. And that is pretty exciting. They're the House Oversight Committee. And that includes 9/11, not just RFK, JFK, MLK. But Kurt Weldon inspired the 9/11 truth movement to come together and produce a single coherent document, which we've done, which is the Presidential Commission on 9/11, where we illustrate all the key points. And this is what he showed to Tucker. And Tucker says, I'm going to do a multi-part series on this whole issue of 9/11. And one of them is going to be on the physical evidence that we're talking about today. So that's pretty exciting. We're finally, after 18 years of working together at AE 9/11 Truth and Richard Gage 9/11, we are coming out of the closet, and it's going to be hell because Senator Johnson has already expressed that he's getting a lot of attacks, and it's not good. I imagine you are too.
Oh, of course. You know, they've even, so when John F. Kennedy was killed, the CIA ramped up the use of the disparaging term conspiracy theorists, even though people are charged in courtrooms in the United States from coast to coast every day with the conspiracy to commit crimes. That's a common charge of a crime that happens every day in courtrooms. But they've now made it toxic to have a theory about all a conspiracy is more than one person joining together to commit a crime. That's a conspiracy. And that happens all the time. But they've now demonized that and weaponized that term. And the thing that's amazing to me, they're so good at it, they even did it with truth. They made the term truth into a toxic. Oh, you're a 9/11 truther. I mean, the fact that they were able to flip that word around and make it into some kind of toxic, negative thing, it just goes to show you how strong the propaganda is around this and how important it is that they don't lose the narrative around what happened on 9/11, right?
I think so. Kamal?
Absolutely. I mean, just there's a lot of power behind the opposition here in this case, trying to prevent these hearings from taking place. So we hope truth will prevail. I mean, truth eventually prevails. But look at the Kennedy assassination, for example. All this evidence is so clear. Do we have another investigation? It's been how many years now? We haven't had that yet. But anyway, I'm a little hopeful now.
Yeah,
there's a little more momentum now, it seems. So.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, gentlemen, do you where should I tell people if they want to learn more about your work? Where should they go?
Well, start with AE911truth.org. That's where the 3,600 architects and engineers are signed on with their statements. These statements are incredible. Read every one of them. There's other news there as well. And also richardgage911.org, presentations, interviews. We've done 1,000 of them around the country over the last 18 years. We've been persistent. And Gail and I are all over these interviews we're doing about 3 a day. I could barely fit you in, Jimmy.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for your work. Thank you for taking time out. You know, we could talk about this for 5 hours. And hopefully you'll get 5 hours to talk about it in front of a congressional hearing. That would be fantastic. So that's good news that it looks like it's going to happen. And I really, you know, your courage can't really be spoken about enough. It's, you know, I know what it's like. I've been doing this for 10 years only. You've been doing it for a lot longer than that. And the slings and arrows and the character assassination is relentless. And I mean, look what they did to RFK Jr. and all he wants is a safety standard test for vaccines. And they ruined him. But he was able to rise above it, and now he's the head of the HHS. And it looks like you are all being at the precipice of doing the same thing with 9/11. So thank you very much. Everybody check out ae911truth.org. And I appreciate your work.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Okay. And over to Steph.
You know, we're going to go, ladies and gentlemen. Let's make this happen.
How was that?
Unfriggin' real, Elise says. Bought my ticket for your Glasgow show. Never thought you'd come to Scotland. Super excited. Ross, it is exciting. Thank you for noticing. Okay, let's see what this one is. All right, come and check out our shows. And if you go to our shows, you can move your mic away just a little bit more, honey. Jimmy Dore Live. You can come and check out our shows at Buffalo, Toledo, Montreal, Ottawa, Glasgow, Manchester, Belfast, Dublin, and more. Here we go. Even if Pam Bondi fails in politics, she will always have a promising career in adult films as Pam Bondage, complete with a gimp mask and ball gag. Thank you. My_war. Thank you, Sound Chaser. Much appreciated. Bob Atlantis, you deserve it, Jimmy. One of the last faithful comics. That's very nice of you, Bob Atlantis. Hey, JD, how do you keep a jackass in suspense? Keep telling them you're going to drop the Epstein files. Funky Lollipop. Look at you, Funky B-Man. Whitney Webb says it's more about money laundering with Epstein. Yeah, I saw that. You are correct about that, B-Man. I saw that interview. Savage! Again, thank you so much, Savage. It's John Bonham, the amazing Blumpkin. Kurt, have you looked into the Cabbage Patch Kids and the Great Reset? Jordan wants to know. I did see something about that. Did you?
Yeah, there's some bizarre craze where it was like greeting cards of like orphan babies.
No.
Back in the day, yeah, because you know those orphan trains where they just sent kids out to the West.
Oh yeah.
To settle the West. It was basically trafficking children by train. And yeah, there's something weird with Cabbage Patch Kids where they're connected to that old timey thing with. It's really bizarre, actually. I don't really understand it, to be honest.
I wanted to do gain of function research, so I popped a couple of Viagra. Amazing Blumpkin. Hey, Aaron Smith. Thank you so much, Aaron Smith. Empire we are. Files. Epstein, JFK, RFK, MLK, 9/11, WMD. So many files, so much to cover up. What's a despot in training to do? Duly noted, the U.S. invited Nazi scientists to America and Canada, gave one a medal. I think Jon Stewart also pinned a medal on a Ukrainian. So anyways, that's old news. All right, Jackie. Oh, Jackie. You are wrong. Wrongness, G. Pam. Law says evidence in court. Look for the uptick in sealed indictments and takedowns of smaller level. It's a happening. This is by the book. If you know what Giuliani did on steroids, IDS. Jackie. Savage, you're back. Thank you. Carl. Glad San Jose show was good. Sadly, I got sick and couldn't go or even give away my 2 VIP tickets. Since you like it so much, maybe make it a regular first, last stop each road trip. Yeah, Carl, that doesn't how it works on tour, buddy. But yeah, San Jose is beautiful. Just so we understand each other completely. Savage. Louise, I jumped through all the hoops and filed my tip for the 10 million. He is in Syria. Saw him on CNN. The State Department owes me money, Louise. This effing guy. I missed the show in San Jose getting ready for my finals. I was truly broken up about it, Jimmy. I love the work you are doing God's work. Love you all. This effing guy.
You missed it.
You know what? But
the finals aren't that important.
But you know what? This effing guy, Jimmy Jimmy Dore's new special, Grab 'em by the Pussy. It'll be coming out soon. You'll be able to check it out in the comfort of your own home after you're getting your grades back from your finals. My_war, thank you so much. Brew Dog, you're the best. Thank you. Julius Patty, right back at you. Thank you so much. Jimmy and Kerp, our classic duo, not gonna lie. Bob of Atlantis, you're back. Jordan, Dave Portnoy is offering first class to Auschwitz so you can do better. Savage, I claim trauma from being colonized by the collective West. All that 45 trillion of gold stolen from India bought 50 million dead. Oh, Savage, 50 million dead Europeans. Okay, thank you so much for that. Arab also called it Persian Gulf for thousands of years until 1960s with the rise of Arab nationalist movements, Building 7. The power transmission, thank you so much, power transmission. Back to JD.